What's up, everyone? Welcome to What's Warhammer. I'm Ravi Johnson, the evil Skaven slave trying to get you into wargaming, or try to help you get into wargaming, rather. This week's topic is, what army should you play? Now, as misleading as that title is, I'm not actually going to tell you which army to pick. I'm going to try and help you with, help give you some tools so that you can pick out an army for yourself that you will really like and really identify with, and that will keep you coming back to the hobby. But first things first, there is no wrong answer. I don't care what your friends tell you. I don't care what the experts tell you. If you don't really like the army, you're not going to keep coming back. You have to find something you really enjoy for the most important reasons. It doesn't matter that, it's harder to paint or it's harder to play. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep coming back. So the most important thing is to find something you really like. It's the same thing with a lot of things like fighting games or whatever. If you don't find something that you really enjoy, you're just going to quit. So hopefully I can help you find something you really like. The first step is to identify your primary goals with wargaming, right? And with your army, and go from there. And so you're going to make a list, hopefully, and it's going to contain the aspects that are most important to you down to what's least important to you. Everyone's list is going to be different. There are no wrong answers, in terms of what's important to you. You might only care about the lore and you might only care about painting, right? So that's completely up to you, right? This is my list. And again, this is just my list, but I go aesthetics, lore, playstyle, strength/competitiveness, and then lastly is price. The only reason price is so far down is because I'm willing to slow grow and take as much time as I need. It just gives me more time to paint. So, I'm not entering tournaments, right? So, there's no rush to get my army completely done up to 2,000 points or whatever in whatever game. So, from here, you need to go what's what's first on your list of importance. For me personally, it's aesthetics. So what do? I go to websites, I check out the models, the selection, and some things won't be available, but that's like the first thing I do. And then you can go to like Google Images and painting groups. My personal favorite is the PMP. But I also go to Facebook groups, Google Image, etc., all that stuff, right? But one aspect that people don't really talk about as much is the army books. Now, for some of you, what the models look like is the most important thing. If you're really into painting the models, then that's going to be the most important thing. But for me, especially back in the day, my favorite army was Skaven, and the models, no offense, GW, back in the day, they didn't look as good as they do now, okay? That's the polite way of saying it. They've gotten so much better, but back in the day, they barely looked like rats, frankly. So what I did was, I had my army book. I would look at these pictures, and that's where I got, that's where I sort of got the feeling of what Skaven really are. And so I would imagine that the models on the tabletop were what I saw in the books. And so that's another way of choosing the aesthetic is to look up, paintings and pictures and get a feeling for them like that. Okay. Next up on my personal list, but again, you go in list of importance for you. But for me, it's lore, believe it or not. So I would go through the army books, but first I usually go through Wikipedia. I probably put that in the wrong order, but like when I was first getting into 40K, I read like the entire history of 40K on Wikipedia, which is the shortened version, of course. And, I was like, wow, like certain armies that I'd never even heard of before, like the Necrons had a surprisingly interesting history. So you could kind of get behind them by doing that, right? And then next you probably want to go to the army books. And last, but certainly not least, most important for getting into the lore is the novels. I love the Thankful novels. I love the Queek novels, and the mini novels, etc. And I've read a bunch of the Warhammer novels, and I really like them. And it gives you more of a feeling, because the reason this is so important to me is because, like, and you'll see it, the reason, why I like the Skaven at the same time is because they're hilarious. you read the novels, you read the background on them, they're all megalomaniacs, and and it's weird that I like Skaven that much, because I usually don't go for these really evil uh, characters and such, but they're so funny, and but yeah, they're horrible to each other. But again, weirdly, that's what I like most about them, I guess. And the fact that they blow themselves up and blow each other up without the least bit of care. But don't really like that they're cannibals. But that's probably the only aspect that I really don't like about them. But it makes sense. They're rats. So anyway, next you go to whatever's third on your list. For me, it's the play style, not their strength. So how they play. You might like them to be, horde armies. You might want them to be rushdown. You might prefer a turtle style. You might prefer more flying armies or whatever. So you have to pick what's best for you, obviously. But the way you can find out about playstyle is looking at battle reports. Especially on YouTube. There's way too many good channels to list, but and then there are tournament blogs and different things like that, strategy blogs. I know Tom Lyons did like a strategy blog before. So that's just another way of figuring out how your army kind of works. And then there are websites dedicated to different armies, especially if they're more popular, like Skaven or Seraphon. They have literally their own websites where you can become a member and post and ask questions and such. Like for Skaven, it's called the Under Empire, I believe. And for Seraphon, I believe it's called Lustria Online. But anyway, many different armies have these websites and such. So check it out. And also ask on Facebook, Reddit. There's competitive Warhammer, I think, is a Reddit, and there's all sorts of Facebook groups you can join. Ask people on there, because most people are happy to teach you about the play style and such. And if you're next for me on the list is strength and competitiveness, and if that's more important or less important for you, a lot of everything that I just said you can find in the similar places, but I put it separate because it's a very different aspect. One is literally just style, and the other is strength. But you can assess them in similar ways. But there's one more step you can take when in terms of how you assess the strength and competitiveness, because there will often be people out there. Like I'm thinking about possibly, maybe, I don't know if I can afford it, don't know if I'll survive it, but maybe start collecting Sylvaneth, because I really like Tree People and I like that whole thing. I really like Wood Elves back in the day, so this is kind of the closest thing that's a little bit different, a little bit unusual. And so anyway, I was, if I do this, I was thinking about reaching out to Tyler Emerson. He's a very competitive player, and, helping me maybe build a list. But there are lots of people out there who play these different armies. And so if you find them within the community, reach out. Why not? Maybe they won't have the time to help you, but maybe they will. So it's a really good way of assessing their strength and such, especially if they're a tournament player. Last on my personal list, and hopefully yours as well, but anyway, is price. You can assess the price by going to the websites and going into your local hobby store and finding out what the retail cost is of these things. But there are also other ways of buying an army, which are secondhand sites like Craigslist and Facebook groups and such like that. If possible, like if you are able to buy things retail, it's a much better way of getting into the hobby. It's hard to explain in a video like this, and maybe I'll do another video about it, but it's more difficult. I got back into the hobby via Craigslist by buying a used Skaven army, and it made my life a lot harder, but it was a lot cheaper. But again, you can slow grow an army, so depending on your priorities and such and your timeline that you want to have stuff done by, slow growing is a great way. And if you buy stuff retail, you're supporting your local hobby shop where you likely play your games. So anyway, these are just the aspects of how I go through picking out my army. I'm constantly doing it, even when I'm not actually collecting, because there's always a cool new thing. There's always a cool new army coming out. I really like Death. I really like Sylvaneth. So part of it for me at this point is staying away. But if you're picking out your first army, hopefully, I've given you some good information about how you can go about doing it. The next video I'm going to be doing is literally how you clip, sprues off your plastic minis and how you go about putting them together. Again, I'm going for really basic stuff, just trying to help people, ease people into the hobby. But I would like to do a quick shout out here, because if any of these videos are going to become popular at all, it's probably going to be this one, because this is the most common question I see. So at this point, I've kind of brought you up to the very basics of how to get into this hobby. But there is a channel that I really love. Unfortunately, they were not around when I first got into the hobby, but when I came back to the hobby, they were, and that's Warhammer Weekly on YouTube. I will definitely put a link in the description below. They are the full package. They may not have some of the production value, perhaps, of some channels out there that exist, but when it comes to information and a great community, I could not recommend them enough. I love them. So that's the PMP on Google+, and Warhammer Weekly is the YouTube channel. They do weekly shows on Wednesdays, and other videos about hobby stuff. Vince Venturella and Tom Lyons, hope I'm pronouncing those both right, two of my favorite people in the whole community. Please check them out, and I'll see you guys next time.